This is the Friday, August 21st, 2015 version of the Market Plus segment. Joining us now is Naomi Blohm. Naomi, welcome back.
Hi, thank you.
Really appreciated a lot of your insights during the program this week, but there was a market we didn't get a chance to cover, and it's one of the only other bull markets still in the commodities arena, and that's cotton. Is it still fundamental factors driving this market?
Cotton found its bottom from the USDA report. It was a little bit friendlier than everyone thought, so it's going to be well supported for now. I kind of think, though, that the market is going to have a lot of resistance on the charts in the October and the December contract at 67 and 68, and we don't have enough fresh news to get it through those levels. So I wouldn't be surprised if it starts to trade sideways now at these higher levels. We're waiting to see if demand at all can pick up. There's talk that Chinese production is going to be down 15% from the previous year, but people aren't really expecting that cotton is going to be imported to China because they still have so much old stuff that they got to work through yet. But the cotton is finally having its friendly story, but just not enough friendly news to keep it going for now on any more dramatic upswing, but it'll hold tight here.
Okay, so the economic uncertainty we've seen in China, particularly over this past week, does that make you think that maybe you should be aggressively selling up here at these levels, or do you hold out and see if we can get some fresh news?
I would be making sales at these levels for sure because, like I said, we don't have any reason for it to go higher. And if the Chinese concerns as far as their whole economic downturn continue, then it does potentially make cotton not as attractive because there would be people maybe not buying shirts or buying other things like that. And so, yeah, make some sales.
Okay. All right. Now, I want to come back to something you mentioned on the program. You talked about the USDA report and then the FSA's prevent planting numbers, which came out earlier this week. And we've got a question here from Fran from Twitter, Fran the Man 44. And Fran is curious, and hopefully you can elaborate on the connection between these two. Do you think all of the prevent plant acres are accounted by the USDA in its report numbers or its resurvey numbers?
I think that they did a good job making it updated and more current. I think that there is more to do yet. I wish I could get my hands on the specific reports and how they accumulate all of that data. But, you know, back in July, we were looking at just Missouri having 1 million to 1.5 million acres in prevent plant, and that didn't show up on the report. So I think the USDA did a good job of having to be truthful and admit the situation. However, there's more to be done yet. Right,
because there was kind of a discrepancy. USDA's resurvey showed right around, I'll call it 900,000 acres reduction in soybeans, and then FSA's prevent plant numbers were 2.2, 2.3 million acres. So, you know, what does the market make of those two different figures?
And it'll take probably the upcoming USDA reports through the end of the year where maybe a little bit more accuracy is on each little report as they understand for sure what type of yield is out there, more truths come out.
So we'll get the real numbers, or the perhaps accurate numbers. January, February is kind of what you anticipate.
Yeah, probably that January anniversary report.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, while we're talking about soybeans, we've got a question here from Phil in Ontario, Canada. And Phil is curious, with soybeans breaking under $9, what is the range you see over the next 8 weeks while we look at harvest?
Sure. In the very short term, looking for 875 as support, 850 is the bigger support. If, however, we get harvesting and the yields are as big as what they're looking at, and if we're not seeing any additional export demand, then that could just allow for a technical washout. And that's when the funds would come in and push things a little lower than they need to. Still, that downside target would be $8, like I had talked about, I think, in the spring at one point. That's always been the target there. But $8 futures would be a huge support area and would be beans that are just too cheap. So in the short term, $8.50, bigger picture, $8, but we don't have the news to justify $8 yet.
Okay, it'll take big numbers coming off the combine.
Yes.
To move us down to that $8.
Right, and the USDA to not admit the FSA number accuracy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it would take kind of a perfect storm of factors.
Yes.
And then the funds would have to get short pretty aggressively.
Yes.
Okay. Now, we've talked a lot about the USDA report. We talked a lot about it last week. We're still talking about it this week, particularly in soybeans. And Mark in Enterprise, Kansas has a question that I'm sure a lot of producers felt here over this past week. And he's curious, what's the purpose of a USDA report besides breaking the markets?
You know, he's not alone with that question. It is very common, and it is frustrating when we have information feeds as fast as Twitter and other things out there, you know, all of the fancy satellite services that are showing data different than the USDA. So my thought is that the USDA is just still using reporting and tracking methods that they have been using since the dinosaur age, and they're continuing to use it because they haven't had a reason to switch it. The reason to switch it might be, in my guess, that it's based on funds, that there's not enough money. Ever since the cutbacks and the sequestration,
Yeah.
that word, the funds just haven't been there. And so I don't think that the accuracy is wrong. It's just that the data collecting methods are so archaic that it's keeping us hindered
Sure.
on
USDA
progress.
did the best that they could.
Yeah.
They followed their mandate.
And then it's just that the rest of us are all saying, but it's this, but it's this. So we have to, unfortunately, just wait till their systems and their methods trickle through, and it can take a year.
Okay.
And that's frustrating. But maybe the great people of Iowa who have a lot of presidential candidates who want their attention, maybe this is something to bring up to them.
This is something we can use our first in the nation status as.
I think so. There you go.
That's right. Get active politically. Now, we've got a question here from a fellow Wisconsinite. Paul in Columbus, Wisconsin is curious, is a drop in the dollar coming?
Yes, actually it's already started. The dollar got to 95 today, and that's the 200-day moving average. And so with all of the uncertainty about the feds and what they're going to be doing, will they or won't they raise rates, the downside, if this 95 area can fail, points to 90. However, we don't have anything to justify it to go lower than that because our currency is still the best thing in town. So with China doing their whole devaluation of their currency, kind of dirty, that's going to keep our market and our dollar a little bit higher for now. But at least just that little bit of a reprieve hopefully will help pick up our exports. Any little bit will help.
Right, make us a little bit cheaper on the world stage. Speaking of exports, Will in St. Ansgar, Iowa is curious if or when could the U.S. hog producer expect to see some benefit from increased pork imports into China? We know that China's got a ban on ractopamine, so I don't believe they're currently taking U.S. pork, but they must be taking it from somewhere.
Yeah, I read something on that. There's a thought that their production in China is going to be down enough that the thought is that they are going to have to import. And this was more just commentary, nothing really behind it yet concrete, but the talk is there. Perhaps with our dollar being a little bit lower, that's going to help. You know, even with their economy faltering, they need to eat. And
that's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. So I don't think that you're going to see just this slash in protein demand by any means. But I'm curious, too, if maybe we start to see that pick up.
Okay, but it might take quite some time before they get the mechanisms in place and really begin to buy internationally.
I would think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, as we take one final look here at the corn market, we've got a question from Martin from Twitter at Martin Danner. Should farmers be buying puts for DEES 15 here at these levels and spending the money for DEES 16? What are your thoughts here as we look out very long term?
I wouldn't. You know, seasonally, a lot of times the market will work lower into September. If you bought a put right now, I don't think that the market would drop hard enough, fast enough, low enough to generate a significant return on your investment. But I would say that in October, that's a lot of times when the market finds its bottom, and then we get a rally towards Christmas. Then I think use that as your opportunity to be locking in some sales and some longer term put opportunities at that time. But just right now, if you were buying a December put, it's just not enough time to justify it.
Okay. Time value of money just isn't there.
Right.
Now, before we let you go, this week we saw crude oil touch some long-term lows, break through some support levels. how low is crude going to go?
40, I think, should hold it for right now, just in the short term, because this was such a significant downside action that now we have to see if demand picks up at this pace. There was some talk that Iraq was going to cut production, and maybe some other OPEC nations were going to start be doing other things like that. So it doesn't mean that we see the market go rallying through 50 by any means, and we're going to stay lower now for a while because the fundamentals have truly shifted that bearish, that there's that much supply. So, but I think 40 holds.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Naomi Blohm, thanks so much for joining us this
thanks,
week.
Mike.
That wraps up this edition of the Market Plus segment. Please continue to send in your questions via Facebook and Twitter, and tell all of your friends about us. Thanks for watching, and have a great week.